Hi, everybody. So, for those of you in the library right now, we're going to be obnoxious for about the next hour and 15 minutes to kick off CoyoteCon.
Wake up.
So, to kick off CoyoteCon, first, what is CoyoteCon? Here at CGCC, Chandler Gilbert, we've been doing our version of Comic-Con on campus for the last 4 years. Sometimes we have things like tabletop gaming panels and Dungeon Master, Game Master trainings and character development, how to make kids books, and a number of other events that are happening this week or have happened in the past. So this one, we've got a captive audience of my English 102 class. So thank you for being here, guys. So I know we've been studying the research and rhetoric of games, and you guys are designing your own. And today we're going to talk about the power of play with our wonderful expert faculty panelists in their own areas. And so, yeah. So we've got a couple questions lined up. If there is anything as each of us are sharing or anybody's sharing that strikes your fancy, you're welcome to raise your hand, ask a question, wave at us. So definitely do that if there's something on your mind connected to how we're doing this. Just for framing, so this is the power of play. It's not just games, but it's everything that might be considered play. And so we'll see how that resonates with the various different expertises here. On the rhetoric side, just as a keystone for me, there is a principle of play when it comes to trying to talk with other people, to convince them, to narrate, to share stories, to experience, to connect when we're building arguments. There's theory on rhetorical theory that talks about this idea of imaginative play, which is a form of empathetic role play, where I don't start by talking with other people expecting them to be where I'm at. I start, as you guys know in my class, with something like the Rogerian model, where I'm trying to get in the headspace of the other person, understand what they believe and why they believe it. And by doing that, I can figure out where we align and where we might need to work some things out or develop more understanding. So that's just as a jump start. But let's start with introductions, I guess. You guys know me. Hi, I'm Greg Fields. I teach English mythology and technical writing here on campus, and so we'll just start there. And then, let's see, we'll go in order based on who. I think order of asking, because you guys go first.
Wait, do you want to go?
So Hallie and Brooke go first. Yeah.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're next.
I'm next by the bullets. I'm Hallie Edmonds. I'm anthropology faculty here. And so I'm a biological anthropologist. So the classes that I generally teach are our Bones, Stones, and Human Evolution class. And I also teach our forensic anthropology class. So a lot of what I'll talk about today is how do we understand play in like primates, and then also what are the types of things we can learn about like human ancestors in the fossil record, and what sorts of hypotheses there are about play sort of evolutionarily.
Thank you. My name is Brooke Huntoft. I also teach anthropology here. I teach mostly cultural anthropology, the anthropology of religion, and anthropology of death and dying, but I also teach Bones, Stones, and Human Evolution, and a special topics in archaeology class. So I'm going to be talking about play from an anthropological, like cultural perspective, and also from an archaeological perspective. What kinds of things, how can we see play thousands of years ago versus just how do we see it amongst each other?
I'm next on the bullet points. Hi, I'm Julie Lazara. I teach psychology here, mostly teach Psych 101, cultural psychology, and developmental psychology, and I'll be talking a little bit about operant conditioning and why we maybe become addicted to play or want to play over and over again. And then self-determination theory, a little bit about flow. That's what I'll focus on.
I'm Scott Zilberman. I teach psychology here, but I've taught 3 different disciplines at the college level: psychology, counseling, and sociology. So I'm here today to talk to you about the sociology aspect of gaming.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
You all are students. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves real quick?
No.
They are the students.
The chairs for a reason.
I would love to hear something about what you guys like to play, or
Yeah.
how you like to play.
So, yeah. let's do a quick name and one way you play, games or otherwise. We're gonna work left to right because I'm mean.
Wait,
Go for it.
right to left.
Well, to me, it's stage left
Oh,
to stage right.
okay.
Yeah, it says stage left.
Stage.
I'm Casey. I usually like anything that really gets your brain like motivated. Like if there's anything like accomplishments or like punishments, I like that.
Okay.
I am Connor Murphy, and I really enjoy tactical games like Fire Emblem and such, as well as cooperative games. I really like playing with friends, so like cooperative games like Rabbits.
Cool.
My name is Garen. I like tabletop role-playing games or anything that lets you express yourself and tell a story.
Either works. Go.
And I like experimenting, seeing what works.
Okay.
I'm Jaden Ripper. I really like brain games like cryptograms.
Okay.
I'm Caitlin. I really like story scenarios.
Okay.
I'm Penny, and I like anything creative.
You.
Okay. I'm Evelyn, and I like adventure or story games.
I'm Gage, and I really like sports.
I'm Amelia, and I like board games.
Do you have a favorite board game?
I like Sorry.
Classic, yeah.
I'm Aktash, and I like role-playing games or multiplayer games.
I'm Aubrey. I like video games. I also play on I'm Cam. I like games with lots of tasks.
With tasks to complete, like Among Us, but not lying. Okay. Cool, cool. Thanks, everybody. Let's see. So the first is, how does your discipline or expertise frame play? And so we'll just we'll just work down the line, right? Because then it's like a timer working its way down, right?
I like it. So anthropology thinks about play in a really broad way that might be a little, how do my students call it, frustrating. I don't actually teach anything about play, but if you ever take one of my classes, you will learn that I don't actually like defining terms. I'll give you a definition and then I will break the definition over and over and over again, because humans are inherently complicated. Everybody is very diverse. What you guys think of as play, each of you named a different kind of thing that you like doing. Does anybody really love like role-playing games? Do you know what I hate? Role-playing games. I hate role-playing. It gives me so much anxiety. So you find this and it's play for you. It ignites something in your brain that changes the way you interact with the world. It ignites something in my brain that wants me to hide under the desk. So that's even just between us. We're in the same culture, and you and I might not think about play in the same way. And then an anthropologist is going to come in and look at a different culture, and they go, well, these people are behaving differently. Are we playing? Is their culture just so different that we don't know what play is? So anthropologists are actually really hesitant to identify things as play. So they more look at how something might function versus what it is. And one of the things that anthropologists sort of settle on is that play changes reality beyond a general agreed upon norm into something that a smaller group agrees upon. In order to play together, you have to all accept a different version of reality and engage with it that way. And so it's something, play is often seen differently if you're in it versus you're out of it. If you're watching people engage in play and you're not engaging in it, you're experiencing it differently, right? And so from an anthropological perspective, play is very frustrating to talk about because it really, it's very context specific. I can't give you a definition of what play is. It's something that achieves an end versus with many different means. I mean, and so many things fit that definition also. So there you go, your first frustratingly anthropological answer.
By the way, what you were just saying, in existential psychology, they would call that constructivism, that every moment we're constructing our own reality, and that would include playing games.
Yeah. A lot of ritual is like that too, actually. Anthropologists have been studying ritual for a really long time, and ritual and play are very similar, but ritual, we talk about it being like a struggle or agonizing. We anthropologists love the meat of something, but the playful, like cotton candy aspects of it, even the way I'm talking about something is giving this bias, but anthropology has always had this bias. So ritual constructs the world around you and play constructs the world around you, and the difference is what the goal of it is, right?
And for my class, remember you're supposed to be taking notes. You forgot. Proof that you were here and active and present mentally.
They obviously have, photographic memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
I used to have one of those.
Cool.
Awesome. So I'm going to pick up on a thread that Brooke brought up, which is, so anthropologists, we study humans, by the way, if that wasn't clear. And so there's lots of different ways that you can study humans. And so Brooke just obviously talked a lot about how, like, in culture and our societies today, like, play can play a really large role. And I was curious because when we were listening to all of the different forms of play you all like, how many of you like play that involves playing with or engaging with others? Okay, awesome, yeah. So one of the things we know about humans is that we are very social creatures, and so that sociality is something that's really, really important. And so to understand humans, one of the things we do is we'll often turn to our closest living primate relatives, so non-human primates. And play is incredibly important to non-human primates. I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit more maybe later on, but play, for instance, in like capuchin monkeys or spider monkeys, those actually become opportunities to learn how to deal with like aggressive encounters later on in your life. And so they've actually measured things like hormone levels during play bouts in these primates, and they find that play is really good at regulating cortisol, but it also gives you like a really nice little dopamine hit. Like, how many of you have been playing a game and you get that little like happy feedback, like, oh, this is great, like I could sit and do this all day, right? Maybe sometimes that's not so good, right? But what we think, right, is that because play, right, interactions with others in all sorts of gaming scenarios, that's actually adaptive. It's something that helps us as a species be able to thrive, to be able to handle aggressive encounters with others, and ultimately helps you with your survival. And so play is one of those things that can tell us a lot really broadly about like human evolution and one of the reasons our species is the way that it is today.
That makes me think, and it probably might blend into what you guys have to bring to the table too. But one of the things that, like, when I was trying to make sure I was going to be a good dad, one of the things that was coming up was like the role of the kind of rough and tumble play. Like you were talking about capuchin monkeys, and I'm thinking like I'm supposed to do this with my kids. But the rough and tumble play with dads, especially for boys, but I don't have any. I have all girls, but still. That's supposed to be a developmental positive.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like what we know from like primates, right? Like sometimes spider monkeys don't want to just play with other spider monkeys. They'll go out and they'll want to play with like capuchins or other primates that live in the same environment as they do, but have very different social structures. And it's interesting because what we find is that even though these primates are very different and they're different sizes and so on, a lot of them really seek out opportunities to play. And so what primatologists have found is that when you experience play as like a younger developing monkey, that makes you much better at handling aggressive encounters that you'll inevitably have later on as an adult. So on the one hand, again, you get like a dopamine hit when you're playing, but it also actually prepares you really well to handle aggression and things in the future, which especially if you're in an area and you're competing for resources and things like that, that's a big part of what you have to deal with. And so to have this sort of play training does a lot of really good things for your development and also sort of your long-term success. So yeah. Well, that rough house has meaning.
I feel like there's some child psychology that we could be pulling on here, though I know I am not a dad. I hate rough and tumble play. Well, that's not true. I don't hate it. But I have a son who likes to punch me in the face. And so, like, there's very few, like, I wasn't punched enough in the face as a child, so I don't handle it well as an adult, you know? And so that, like, having kids and then thinking about play, like in terms of preparing them for life, you know, it's like there's a whole level of stress there that I wasn't prepared for when I decided to be a parent. Yeah.
I ran across a video that made me think of what you were talking about, and it was this like lion dad and the lion cub, and they were roughhousing, and then the mom lion came over and was just like, oh no, I am not having that. And I've seen another like meme too of dads throwing the kid in the
my
air,
husband.
you know?
8 feet.
Yes, and and the mom's just like, I spend all day trying to protect them, then the dad comes home and is just like, let me roughhouse and get hurt. So, okay, so psychology of play. I think I want to talk about. There's so many different ways we could go, but from a developmental perspective, when you are a child, and you were talking a bit about this with other animals too, that is your first form of learning, and play is really important. So play is a child's work. That's your homework, that's your work. So before you go to school, play is super important. And I think it's interesting in my class for developmental psychology, I have my students look at different toys and have to think about what are the benefits of this toy, from a like, you're fine in motor skills, what are you developing cognitively and socially? What are you getting out of this? And we don't necessarily have to go and buy expensive toys. I feel like all the toys now have all the bells, and they might be overstimulating. But there's still a reason why just simple blocks or Legos, or like I feel like everyone had to have the shape sorter where you try to put in the shapes and the different things. So play like that, and then playing with each other. We were talking a little bit before too, Greg and I, about that at first kids don't really play together. They're just parallel play. So you would go on maybe a date where each parent brings their kid, and you're like, my kids are gonna play together. And they're like, we don't care about the other child. They're just gonna kind of play next to each other. But you do have to think about, it is so important. Play is important for learning and for perspective taking too. So even those early, like, and typically we see girls do this more, but I think young boys too, that perspective taking and the role play. So before you get to D&D and these other games, I can remember being on recess and like, you're gonna be the princess and you're gonna be this, and you take on these other perspectives and you get to have this really imaginative play. And I think that that's important to have build empathy too.
I want to start with a question. What's the difference between psychology and sociology? Anybody know? What do you think?
Sociology is more like the study of how like humans like speak with each other, communicate with another within different aspects, and psychology is more of how the mentality can go into that, which psychology can delve into like aspects of sociology, but it could just be like the first one.
Right, and they do overlap. And what were you going to say?
That was really good. I was going to say sociology is more society, is what it sounded like to me. Like how people interact as a group, and then psychology is more individual, how people act as a person.
Absolutely, group versus individual. So I didn't tell you guys this about me. I have a second part-time job. I'm a psychologist, and I see kids that get arrested, and I make recommendations to the judge for their court hearing. It's kind of a one and done evaluation thing. So I'm telling you that because if I look familiar, that's not a good sign, huh? I saw you in lockup back in the day, and you were locked up. Yeah, I've been doing that for 25 years now, 26 years, since the year 2000. But anyway, I've never had a good example. Psychology, sociology, well, individual behavior, group behavior, until one kid. I see him and he goes, Doc, I don't know why they think I want to hurt people. I would never want to hurt people. And I said, but I'm looking at your list of complaints. 5 times you've been caught with a gun, once at school, once in your car, and other places. And he goes, what, should I be the only one in my neighborhood without a gun? Sociology. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Group behavior. That's the company he keeps. That's his mini society, is other kids who pack heat, who have guns with them at all times. Did any of you not grow up around that? Like you just didn't have a gun when you were a kid, an adolescent, and a teenager? Me neither. So look what I missed out on. You know, in his neighborhood, everybody's got one when you're 12 years old. And in my neighborhood, that just wasn't a thing. So see, it's all the company you keep. Sociology, group behavior.
I didn't have guns in the house, but I have been in a drive-by, and I did live in gang neighborhoods.
Oh my
I
goodness.
just was really good at running. Like I was
Wow.
just a good sprinter, so it made it.
There you go.
Less fighting, more running.
Yeah.
Plus, I was the wrong ethnicity for the gangs I lived in.
They wouldn't have wanted you anyway.
Yeah,
huh?
that's right.
Okay.
That's where-
Group behavior.
Okay, so what impact do games and forms of play have on culture, good or bad, based on your backgrounds and expertise?
Okay, well, anthropologists go to like great gymnastic lengths to never call anything bad. Like this, we try not to we try not to just impose our views on other things. I think that from an anthropological perspective, everything is important because people do it. I can't come into your community and say, well, this behavior you're engaging in is actually highly problematic because I'm not one of you, right? I am one of me and I'm outside of your culture. And so from an anthropological perspective, we're not supposed to say good or bad, but those are just incredibly useful words that do a lot of work for us.
An ethical, moral anchor.
You know, they do.
Sometimes I shift and say effective or ineffective, but I couldn't figure out how to do that with this context.
That's fair. That's
Yeah,
fair.
no.
And I think that play in culture is highly effective for all the reasons that everybody has said. Play is really useful for learning. And if you step back and you think about play more generally, and we're going to contrast it, and we hate a binary, but we're going to use one anyways, because they can be highly effective. And you can contrast play with work, right? Does anybody really love their work? Okay, all of us should raise our hands. Okay, right? Right, we all have to
raise our hands in this moment.
I should have told you that. By the way, I'm going to put you on the spot, right? But sometimes you can do work that you really, really love. There might be aspects of it that maybe you don't love, but it can still feel like play. But when we think about a contrast of work and play, play is something that engages a different reality. And from an anthropological perspective, it's almost something in which all the possibilities of the universe are open. Work is like, I don't know, being the superhero. You have ethical, moral, physical boundaries that you have to do. Like Superman can only do so many things because he's like Superman, right? At least old Superman. But villains get to do anything. They could be good, they could be bad, they could be gray, they could be whatever, right? And so play is like that. It can be anything. When you are playing, anything is an option. And so when I was doing a little bit of research for this, they said that, the person that I was reading said that scientists, when they're figuring out where to go next, play with the possibilities, right? And if any of you have ever written a paper and you're struggling with it, go talk to somebody about it and bounce ideas back and forth. Gamify your writing, gamify your research. What if this? If you can ask what if, now you're engaged in play from an anthropological perspective because you've opened up the reality into something where anything is possible. And it allows you to step outside the box, if you will. So reality and work is the box and play is everything else, right? And sometimes when you play, you can make your box bigger. And that is a net positive, that's effective for culture. And you can think about that in terms of child learning, in terms of your learning, in terms of survival skills, in terms of just stress relief. Do you guys play games to relieve stress? Do you watch TV to relieve stress? I would argue that any of these things are a form of play. Some of them are more passive and some of them are more active. But anything that allows you to step outside your box, your reality, and pretend to be something else is play from at least my perspective. And that is always going to be good. I think perhaps if you take it to extremes, then things might be ineffective culturally or bad. But I don't, that might be more Julie than me.
Those were great points, Brooke.
Well, thank you.
I know. anthropologists, we're the ones that, to Brooke's point, we never like to say like that's good or that's bad. So in anthropology, we have a concept called cultural relativism, which is this whole notion of like understanding, say, a culture outside of my own for what it is on the basis of how it's constructed and its tenets and so on, rather than strictly comparing it to how I see and participate in the world, right? And so one thing though, so I will also not use good or bad. I like effective or ineffective. Maybe that's a better way of thinking about it. But we'll say that something that I think you all demonstrated today is that all humans engage in play. Human societies all engage in play. Now what that looks like can be really different, and through time and space that can be really different. But even when we turn back into the archaeological record, like we have evidence of forms of play. We obviously don't have things like behavior sort of preserved in the fossil record, but what we do have in some cases at archaeological sites are things like carved bone and things that were obviously used as like part of a dice game. We have things.
A prop for you if you
and
want.
Yeah, and Brooke brought a prop for you. In fact,
I was wondering what that was.
Pass it around.
pass it
Yeah,
out.
do you guys
Can
want-
you tell them really quick
Yes,
what that is?
I can tell you guys what. Okay, this was a wedding guest gift for a friend of mine who married a woman from Nepal. So I won't actually pass this around. But it's a little felt house. I assume actually it's a house. I didn't go to the wedding, so I didn't get to know. But it is a divination and dice game. These are actual bones. I think I'm going to give them to my bone person and let her tell me what kind of bone they are.
They look like goat bones.
Yeah, well, I think they are. They're sheep goat bones, but I think they are.
Oh, what part of the body?
Yeah, I think they're the heel or something.
They might be little vertebrae.
Oh.
Okay, I don't know.
I'll hold it for you.
Okay, anyways,
big
these are real
tooth.
bones. If you have a problem with real bones, you don't have to hold them, but there are 4 of them, and each side actually, depending on how it falls, it's named something different, and I think they're all animals. Oh, and it's all in, wait, this side's in Russian. Horse, sheep, camel, goat, and I don't have them labeled, but like this might be horse, sheep, camel, and goat. And then you ask it questions, and depending on how each of them fall, then it's going to give you certain answers. Like your answer might be very good, or so-so, other person may be right, or something like that. But early dice games, often anything with a lot of chance in it, people like to also use as divination, or a way to like tell the future or divine information you don't have access to. So yeah, actually almost all games have chance, but this was probably developed independently in every region of the world. Somebody threw bones or seeds or something and tried to divine the future, or also just played dice games. Have you guys ever played jacks, where you have the little things? Like these are early jacks. Kids in Nepal still throw these. They throw them up and they try to catch them on the back of their hand, and then any that fall, they have to do like a similar sort of jacks thing. But anyways, I will put these back, and you guys can pass them around if you want. Do you guys want to see them first? Here.
Am I the only
have a
one
lid.
who's wondering if Google Lens would know exactly what these things were? It might.
They might, yeah. I don't know. I know they were very difficult to import. That is all I know.
Makes sense.
It's hard to bring in bones. But anyways, please, I
Oh, no, that was
distracted you
perfect.
from your dice
No,
game.
No.
Are you guys doing good back there? You're not falling asleep in the back? Cool.
We could be louder.
Like, I don't know how you could fall asleep. But those chairs also look really squishy comfortable compared to like the class.
They look like they would
chairs,
encourage
so-
naps.
Yeah,
Chair naps.
dangerous.
But anyways, so Brooke's, so take a look at Brooke's set, which is super cool. But I think one of the things that I think anthropologists would all agree on is that, humans, like we all play, like we all engage in play in these very different ways. So go ahead, Julie, I'll kick it off to you.
Okay.
That was my main point.
It's like, what is, I don't even remember the question
Yeah.
anymore. Okay, I knew it was about
The
culture.
sun's so bright it reflects.
Yeah.
Hard to read.
So I wanted to talk about culture from the lens of my cultural psychology class. And one thing that I have students do is they have to create my cultural stories. So not mine, yours. Everybody has to make their own. And I have some students that are like, I don't have a culture. And that always makes me very sad to hear. What do you mean you don't have a culture? So when you think of culture, what comes to your mind? And you can just answer that silently to yourself. Think about, do you have a culture, and what does culture really mean? So think about a group that you belong to, that you share a common language and practices, and you can teach maybe the next generation, and you have these tools that you're sharing. And they're like, they're still trying to think about, do I have culture? And I have one student, actually there's a couple, this semester. So one is doing my cultural story as a gamer. So being a gamer, if you feel like, and maybe you don't identify as that, but you can if there is a group that you do this with, and think about like the lingo that you use. I know when I went to go, actually we went to go observe the Dungeons and Dragons crew, and I had some of my students go, like, what are they talking about? I don't know. There's this language that's shared that an outsider wouldn't know. And my husband also convinced me to go to, what was it? It was Stardew Valley. How many of you have heard of that game? So there was a Stardew Valley like concert, and I'm like, what am I getting myself into? But we went, and they were playing, like, it was an orchestra, and then it had the game up, and people were cheering, and they were saying things. I felt really left out because I didn't know. I'm like, why is this funny? And I'm like asking my husband and daughter. So people that were there, they felt this sense of culture. They all played this game. And so especially if there's a particular game that you all play, even going further into just being a gamer, because even if you say I'm a gamer, there's so many different types. Like you all were saying, I like role play games. Some people like more individual games or accomplishing things, but you can think of it as a culture, and that is a reason why it might be something that you want to do and that you share with other people. So you meet someone else like, oh, you like that too, and you can share in that.
What a perfect segue. A little activity.
It's Mario
Okay.
and Luigi.
And
I don't know who that is.
I don't know.
Call of Duty?
Black Ops, Call of Duty, is that right? Okay, you guys know this better.
I
How
know
many
Mario
of
and
you
the-
consider yourself gamers as far as video games? Oh, nearly everybody, except the back row there.
Here, stand up if you've got your hand raised, stand up. It'll help you get constant. Actually, everybody, just stand up for a minute while he hands these out. It'll help. That way you can reach a little further. You won't have to, and it'll give you a chance to kind of get the wiggles out. Or the sleepies for that matter.
Make my students do jumping jacks. I'm always checking out, but
I make my students do aerobics sometimes. Like body
Everybody have one?
oh, thank you.
It's a Google image, I have no idea. Did everybody get one? Okay,
Cannot
so
be held
speaking of
responsible.
culture,
Oh,
it
thank
says it on this
you.
handout, subculture.
Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Did you not get one?
She was returning the bones.
Okay,
Bonesy bones.
so, have you heard of these acronyms, RPGs, role-playing games? What about this one? MMOs, massive multiplayer online games. Okay, when I was a teenager, video games were two things. Either you sat at home with the console in front of you, Intellivision, Atari, Nintendo, or you would go to this thing called an arcade where you had to put tokens in and play it there. What do those two things have in common? One player, two player. Those were your only option. It was not group behavior. But guess what? That has drastically changed now. If you're playing Black Ops or any other game, how many people could be playing at once? A ton, right? So that's why the MMO is a popular thing. Post-subcultural theory in sociology says, unlike real life, we tend to hang out with people that are similar to us in economic status, in race, ethnicity, age. Those tend to be our friends. But you know what? Not in gaming. When it comes to a ton of people, we interact with all kinds of different people. So, one quick thing, I think you'll like this. I have another handout for you, and then we'll give somebody else a turn. We brought you a little stack that's video game themed. Can we be 10-year-olds again just for a minute?
Are they fruit snacks?
You're gonna win
This is playing.
Fruit Roll-Ups,
Fruit Roll-Ups.
Super Mario Brothers edition.
I love fruit roll-ups.
You have to tell me this. The top 20 games from 2026 January, the most recent data is several weeks old, late January. What are they? People are playing what?
Minecraft.
Minecraft is number 4. Roblox. How could that not be on here?
Wow.
I might be overlooking. Call of Duty is number 1.
Hollow Knight 2.
What?
Two, I guess it would be.
I don't see that on here. Let's take a look. And this might not be right. You know, I just pull things off of the internet. Who knows? What do you think? Let's see. Some sports ones like Madden, NBA 26. Yeah. Oh, let's see if that's on here. Kingdom Come, Pokemon Legends.
Should have sorted by alphabet.
Connor, you're so judgmental.
Black Ops 7.
Could this be accurate, or do you think this is wrong? It doesn't look right?
What's your source?
Yeah.
Just the
We
internet?
need to source it.
Oh, NBA.
Just remember, demographically, games are designed for 18 to 35. Right? A 30-year-old with no kids or wife has a lot more spending money than you do in most cases.
What
What you just said reminded me of my favorite meme. It says, the internet is always accurate. Abraham Lincoln, 1860. All right. For your participation, we have these Super Mario Brothers fruit roll-ups, enough for everybody to take 2, because I didn't know how many people would show up here. You can't go wrong with these.
he mathed for you.
Plus the variety pack with tongue tattoo, blue raspberries.
What is tongue tattoo?
We're not needed. They just need Scott.
Yeah, seriously.
Tongue tattoo.
When you asked me if I was supposed to prepare slides, I didn't realize I was supposed to bring props. Like,
Scott's really showing us up. Well, and you got your I got nothing.
Julie, we got it.
I had to run back in for it.
So it's a really
Bones and
meaningful thing
treats?
that it makes me think of, but it's not necessarily my area of expertise.
I've never had one before.
As you guys are passing things around, it's meaningful to note that games and certain types of games do give us access to people from different perspectives, or with different perspectives, right? And so if we're thinking from a rhetorical standpoint, being able to consider the various different audiences we might engage with and understand them better and connect with them is meaningful. And while, like, from a cultural point, it is much less common now than 100 years ago for you all at your age to be interacting with someone who is over the age of 45, right? On a regular basis. If you have that, that's wonderful, but it's much less common in our generation. So a place where games can facilitate interaction, intergenerational interaction is actually pretty meaningful.
That's cool.
But before we move on,
Yeah.
you guys are aware that you just played, right? Like, okay. Did you, like, I wasn't even playing, but I was looking over the shoulder because I wanted to. I know nothing about games.
Me neither.
But even, like, on the outside, I got the dopamine hit because I recognized a game being played, and it changed our interaction, right? It actually also changed the power dynamic, right? There's five of us up here, and we're, like, in a position of power anthropologically, right? You guys are all trained for what this does. But then Scott Silberman took power and gave it back to you.
broke the
It
wall.
changed the boundaries of reality. And I just thought that was really fun from the outside,
That's a
and I
good
wanted to
point.
point that out.
That's a great
I
observation.
like that games change the boundaries of reality.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
an amazing thought.
It is.
That's imagination, but I
Yeah.
like how you said that.
Did anybody who wanted one or two get them? Because we do have some extras, it looks like. Some of you didn't take any?
Does anyone want another fruit roll
I'll
up?
take the whole box.
Yeah.
Like the way my fruit snacks go in class or club, like some people are able to eat 8 to 10 at a time.
Again.
We won't name names.
It says tongue tattooed. Are your tongues different colors now? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
This is a level
for
of play
I will
we've not
answer this
engaged
question
in.
a little bit. When I teach mythology, that course, and kind of riffing off what Brooke said, that course emphasizes mythos. My normal classes, English 101 and 102, emphasize veritas. And so those are two different values. Veritas is the power of truth, and we're doing research and we're trying to figure out the best way to present information so that it'll be taken in. And mythology is all about the power of story and the ability of stories to impact culture and behavior and have sticking power to keep people moving in a certain direction, or to affect their and answer big life questions. And so with mythology, sometimes just thinking about something as powerful over true becomes really meaningful in a lot of different domains. Sometimes when you go, when you are emphasizing in traditional rhetorical training, when you're emphasizing veritas and trying to make sure you have all the facts and all the research, you guys have heard me say this before, some of you, but you become really good at winning arguments and really also very adept at losing friends. And sometimes with the power of mythos and the mythology side, the imaginative play side of things allows me to go, okay, I'm not going to immediately say they're wrong. I'm going to try and unpack and empathize and understand so that I can figure out why a whole culture thought this thing was the thing to do. And so, and even if in the end, like I have to have a judgment call, I would then draw on rhetoric to say, depending on my purpose, right? Rhetoric is all about accomplishing a purpose. And so sometimes we can add that as a lens if we need to make some sort of value judgment, which I understand is dangerous. But mythos gives us a different lens into empathy than traditional English 101 or 102 classes. And so that's, if we're going good-bad spectrum, it's like those are some of the goods and bads. If you, on the mythology side, some of the interesting things that can happen, people who go all empathy, sometimes that can be bad too, because then they lose a sense of self as they dig into the stories of other cultures and that sort of thing. That can be considered bad, if hanging on to your sense of self is a core purpose, right? Just trying to find the balance between individual and social. But yeah, cool. Any thoughts on what anybody else has shared or said at this point before I go to the next question? And actually, I'm going to ping it out to them.
No, I love that. That was great. It was very anthropological, honestly. You're welcome.
Before I jump to the next question I have, what is this making you all think about? We'll just take a couple minutes and you can share out just what you're thinking. What's it bringing to mind? Connor?
My mind went to the good and bad and the irrational thoughts of like how some video games may cause like kids to do bad stuff like school shootings and such, and that parents will irrationally blame video games for that. And I felt like if anything, there's maybe a bad example of that, even though we're not using bad or effective. I think that but also that's been proven to not be true for almost every case.
That's interesting. That's something that I fear with like rough play. Like when my son just wants me to smack him with a big pillow so that he like falls to the couch. My son is 4. And I think, am I teaching him that violence is like an actual good thing to participate in? Or is it also just relieving me of stress and allowing me to lash out in an appropriate way? You know? And so it's like, how far is too far, right? And I think that video games get a really bad rap, but they're so intangible from a person outside of that realm that it's hard to like grasp it, right? Yeah. I think almost all play is irrational in some way, you know? So, but yeah.
Behind Karen, sorry, I don't know your name, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Let's see.
Hi. So when you were talking about playing with your son and hitting him and you're afraid of taking it too far, it reminded me because like I'm a crazy cat and I had a mama cat who had kittens and her kittens would play with her, but the kittens would take it too far, so the mom would, nip at them or whatever to tell them like, hey, this is too much, you can't do that. I acquired a stray, a little black cat, and she likes to play with all the other cats in my house, but she didn't know when to stop. So she's just like going at it. And just having that type of play where you're roughhousing, but it does take it a little to the edge so that, children, animals, or whoever can understand like, hey, we gotta slow down, this is crazy. Right? So that's what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's cool. Thank you.
It makes me think of like play. I've heard it described play as when you engage in play, if you engage in antisocial ways versus pro-social, right? I think is the those become really meaningful developmentally if you don't adjust the pattern because of it. But before I lose track, Garen, what were you going to say?
So my dad works in education, and he says that all of the kindergartners want to fight all the time. That's all they do. They want to fight each other. So that's what I was thinking of whenever we were talking about this. I don't know if what causes that, but I think it's interesting.
Definitely their parents letting them play things like Mortal Kombat. It's gotta be. Smash Bros. I'm joking. That's a joke, is what Connor said, just to be clear. Caitlin.
It made me think about discretion in like police force, because that's what I'm going into. But depending on like what the culture is of the city that they're for, the agency, whether they give somebody a ticket or not, is based on that, or based on how the person reacts, all that kind of stuff. So it's really based on the culture of where they are. Like even if like they're out of their city that they work for, they have to take into account like what usually happens over here. Like should I like let's say they're in a dangerous neighborhood, should I be driving with my lights on? Should I be making noise, or should I be like that kind of stuff?
Something that occurred to me that was like almost a thread you could pull across all of your accounts, which granted I know were like humans and cats and things, but a lot of them had to do with individuals that were younger, right?
Yes, I was going to say
and so
that.
to me, it made me think about how like when we are very young, right, and like growth and development is happening, like part of you as you are developing is to an extent like boundary testing, right? Now the boundaries for a cat are going to be really different than like a boundary for a child, but like inherently like we have these sorts of things like built into us, right, that have been carried through millennia with evolution as a way to like test boundaries to a certain way. And then you go too far and then like your mom cat's gonna like let you know you have gone too far, right? And so I just think that's really interesting about how the context of play is very different maybe when we're a little kiddo versus how you grow and develop as an adult, and like the effect of that throughout growth and development as well. That was what came to mind.
I was going to comment something similar to what Connor was saying about violence in video games. We do talk about this in psychology, and you do want to think about, are you going to let your kid, and think about the age, is it appropriate? And that's why there's ratings on different things, whether it's playing a video game or watching a violent show, because do they know the difference between reality and play? Can they make that difference? So is it good for a developing brain? Maybe not. That's something that each parent is going to have to decide. But there is something about catharsis too. If you're getting it out in a video game, is that helping you get out some anger that maybe you wouldn't otherwise get out? There was a study that I thought was really interesting. It was the Fast and the Furious study. So you all are familiar with the many movies, right? So if you go and watch the movie, what they did was they tested people as they were leaving the movie theater, watching that movie versus watching another movie. And what do you think that they found? There was a behavior, because we say, does media affect our behavior? What behavior changed as people left the movie theater? They were, so the ones who watched that movie did drive faster. So we like to think like, it's not gonna have any impact on me, but it could. Well, even me listening to a really good song, sometimes it's like, okay, you're listening to a good song, your driving might change because of that. So it's just something to think about the media that you're consuming.
I do think there's a point though where that becomes a matter of it's taken too far. Like the school shooting thing.
Right.
That's taken to a very high extreme. And I believe somebody mentioned something else earlier about like living through something else. Like if you're doing some role playing, you're playing as a princess. You're acting out the role of somebody you're not. Even if they want to believe that they are, or like D&D, like there's a point where you have to realize that most people know that they're not going to become some chivalrous knight when they turn 40. They're not. It's not.
It would be nice, but.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I think there's and if we're talking school shootings that are like a teenager versus a kid, that's different, right? Like kids who have access, like young children under the age of 10 who have access to firearms, since we're using that as the example, as opposed to long swords or bows and arrows or whatever. if they don't if they're in games that respawn and there's no consequence, then sometimes games that don't have boundaries and don't have consequence make them think that that's what it's like here. And so that's one challenge. But the other is, and I only know this vicariously through doing learning communities, that we had a learning community with psychology a couple years back, and they did, it was like the aberrant psychology unit where they had a graphic novel connected to, is it Dahmer? But part of it was like there are behaviors for sociopaths and psychopaths. I'm outside my expertise here, where some of the way they interact with other things or people in the world, you know, excessive violence at early ages toward animals and that sort of thing. That so video games, I don't know the research on that, but as far as how it plays out, but in a culture where there aren't video games, it might show up in other ways too. Whether the video games caused it or created or allowed an outlet for it, I don't know the research on that.
Makes sense.
Any other thoughts on what we've talked about so far?
There's a hand.
I really thought, and I just thought it was an interesting fact that you are like, you can legally, you know, be competent at the age of 8 with like killing someone. So even if you're that young, you'll still be, you know the crime that you're doing for. You can't say like, oh, this kid's too young. They don't know that this had a consequence. Which I thought it was interesting because 8's pretty young for that.
8 years old, you said, yeah. And to have that be a universal standard, and I don't know if it is a universal standard, but
It's at least a U.S. standard.
yeah, when we know that things like it's one thing to premeditate, another thing to have a crime of passion, and if they're emotional, again, why do I keep stepping out of my lane?
You want to be a psychologist
Yeah,
or
sorry.
anthropologist? I don't know.
Go for it.
What would
Like
be
it,
the
lean
what would
into
be
it.
the repercussions if there's child development delays from a psychology perspective? Not to throw that at you guys without
Scott, what do you
warning.
think?
That's one aspect of it, is the delayed development, but another aspect of it is honestly, what's wrong with a kid who's 8 years old and wants to kill people? I mean, you could Google this. There was a case probably 25 years ago, an 8-year-old shot and killed his father and his father's friend in St. John's, Arizona. And like, what does the court do with that exactly? You know, it's hard to imagine putting an 8-year-old in a prison because he purposely did something like this. And yeah, it just makes you wonder, like, what is going on in somebody's brain that young who would even want to do something like that? What do you think?
Well, I'm the type of guy that always gives the benefit of the doubt, but maybe this is a weird benefit of the doubt, but perhaps his father wasn't a great person, or like perhaps there was a divorce or something, and the kid was really struggling. Also, the fact that I don't think elementary schools really teach enough about gun safety.
Yeah.
And that if
Good
this
point.
is a problem so early on in age, of like children, then this should be a problem that elementary schools teach so early on.
Funny you say that about the parents and what they did. Google it, 8-year-old, St. John's, Arizona, murder, and you'll see that when the police interviewed this kid, they said, well, when did you decide you were going to kill your father and his friend? And he said, well, it was last night, and I decided this is going to be my last spanking. So his dad disciplined him, and he decided that's what he was going to do. 8 years old?
So, Caitlin and Aiden, real fast. So.
Another thing is like, another argument in court is like, is this the parents' fault or the child's fault? Especially with like school shootings. Like there was one that long ago that I was talking about in one of my classes, where the father went hunting with his son, and then obviously gave him the weapon, and then the son turned around and brought it to school, and the father was partially at fault. I mean, obviously the kid's still getting jail time, but father was in trouble too because he provided the weapon. Whether it was intentionally bad or good.
Yeah, that one in Michigan, the father was just convicted, and they knew that their son wanted to kill people and still let him have his own gun.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah. So, we brought up the claim for like, the child was obviously like, talking about the discipline thing where he was like, okay, I decided I'm going to kill my father the next day because he disciplined me. Obviously, somehow this 8-year-old child knew how to use a gun with a purpose.
Exactly.
And so, what was he brought up in? What was like what was he around that like somehow this 8-year-old has a knowledge of how to use a gun and why a gun would be used. So, and then you also brought up the idea of like educating children of that young age of like how to use them, gun safety and such. I've seen both sides of like educating children on mature matters at younger ages. Sometimes this can like put them into like a desensitization where they're like, this is a thing, or like putting it at such a young age and sometimes traumatizing them and stuff like that. Which I believe sometimes, depending on what environment you're in, yes, gun safety should be taught. But like if you're like 7, 8 years old, you're in a classroom and you start getting taught gun safety, I feel like you're going to be a little confused because that's not part of your normal curriculum.
Jane River?
Which I would be curious about.
I would say I do slightly agree with that, but I also feel like school shootings are so predominant within like elementary schools. It's good to teach them about gun safety and how to avoid those kinds of things. Well, I do think like I do agree that it's kind of out of the norm to teach younger kids. It's so like unfortunately normalized about school shootings that it's good to teach them at a young age how to avoid those situations or how to keep them safe in those situations.
Well, and so we can have a longer conversation. From a rhetorical standpoint, I'll emphasize one thing, Connor, and one thing I am hearing is the word should, and is a meaningful linchpin here, because you guys are saying it's somebody's responsibility to do this. And in our class, we talked about like stakeholder analysis, and even I think we even got through Althusser's ideological apparatuses in different parts of society, and. But using that should starts to put it's like, does that mean it's not someone else's? And so we can explore that a little bit. But for the sake of moving the conversation on past shooting, firearms, violence, not that we couldn't, but we could have it's a major issue that we could get rabbit holed in quickly. Let's go to the next one. So describe the weirdest example or version of play or games you know of.
I have such a good example. It's an ancient Greek example, actually. I used to teach classics. I used to teach Greek and Roman mythology, not world mythology. So much more limited, but it means that I had access to a lot of really weird things the Greeks did, and their weirdest game they played at a symposia, so their like dinner parties would involve everybody laying down, reclining on their side, on their left arm. You had to recline on your left side on special couches, and that's how they would eat. And they would just eat and drink and laugh and talk for hours and hours and hours. And they drank wine out of, I don't know, a weird margarita kind of glass. Like those margarita glasses are just designed for you to spill, in my opinion. So they're really wide-mouthed, very shallow, the Greek wine glasses, and they had little handles on the ends. And once you got to the bottom, Greek wine had sediment in it. I don't know if you guys, I don't even want to like age myself right now, but some wines have like grit at the bottom of them. And all Greek wine had grit. Especially because they would season their wine with like herbs and stuff. The Greeks were not bad. We don't value judge, but that seems weird. And so once you get to the bottom of your glass, there would be stuff at the bottom, and there would be, in essence, like a spittoon bowl in the middle of everybody's couches, and they would take it and they would hook their finger in the little loophole at the edge of the thing, and they would try to fling the sediment into the bowl in the middle, and that was their game. They, like in Sicily, where we think that started, they designed rooms specifically so that every couch would have equal access and good angle to play this game for this purpose. And that is my weirdest thing. And then they would get prizes. You would get like certain kinds of like desserts or treats. They would get sometimes amphorae, which are big like wine jars filled with wine. This was a very this was so common people would just talk about it in plays and not describe it. So we actually had to put it together. They depicted it on bowls. It was really weird, in my opinion.
So to be clear, when they're talking about having grit, like if you've had to do the Angela Duckworth get gritty or anything like that, we don't mean get to the bottom of a wine glass. That's not. We're not endorsing that.
No.
Just to be clear, that's not what we're saying.
No.
Especially at most of your ages.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes.
This is great.
I'm
so
nervous.
you said it's always on the left hand.
Yes.
And so you had to do this right.
Yes.
And how long would this last, and would it be all ages? Like, is this just an adults thing, or is this like, and it's something like kiddos would engage in?
Okay, there is an artistic I don't remember if it is on a jar or if it is like a relief carving somewhere of kids in Sicily doing this. It's really difficult. The Greeks, their development of art, kids were just very small adults. You know, kids have different proportions than adult bodies do. And so their kids looked kind of weird. And so it's hard to tell sometimes if they're depicting somebody who is of short stature or somebody who is a child because they look the same. But it was frequently something that only men did. Women were not allowed to participate in these unless you were paid to be there, if you, as it were. That's where I'll leave that. Yeah, so women weren't really allowed to participate in this.
It's a whole different
I
kind
have so many questions.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
That's not a good joke. I'm sorry. We're gonna move.
Well, it's okay. Well, some of these women, actually the most educated women in ancient Greece were often prostitutes because they were invited to things like this, and these were very often intellectual gatherings. And so the highest paid prostitutes would often be very educated so that they could add to the conversation and be like, it was sort of like bringing a really good dinner guest to like that person that's really good at talking to everybody. So yeah, and we'll leave it there. Okay.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take it a different route. So when I was preparing for this, I was really interested to see like, well, when is like the first evidence where we see like gaming, and in the sense of like a game with like things that you would play a game with. And so what I was really surprised to learn is that from the archaeological record, for a very long time, we thought that the tradition of gaming, or to use like dice or bones, was strictly like an old world European thing. And it turns out the earliest evidence actually comes from North America. So we have archaeological sites from about 12,500 years ago, which sort of similar to Brooks Prop, they had like these carved bone pieces that were just carved on two sides. And so the idea was that you would hold multiple pieces together and then they would in theory be tossed. And so there were sort of binary options. You were either going to get one side versus another. And so if you think about that as a starting point, now that's sort of like the very first form of dice. And so now our dice don't usually come in two-sided forms. We all have four or more. And so it's really interesting because for a long time we always think about like these things as starting in one area of the world, but then we find these like really cool sites that tell us no, actually like people were engaging in these sorts of dice games like over 12,000 years ago in North America. So it's very cool.
For reference, the earliest examples we have of this are from 5000 BCE. The New World example beats it by 7,000 years.
Yeah.
That is crazy pants from an archaeological perspective. Technical term, crazy pants.
Artifacts of gaming go back 12,000 years, is that what you're saying?
14,000 years.
Yeah.
So 12,000 BCE is 14,000 years ago.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. I didn't.
That's okay.
Tracking that.
That's what I'm here for.
But it's crazy, right? Like it's something that, you know, when we think about like gaming is not just like a new modern thing, like this intent or desire to engage in these sorts of activities actually goes much farther back. And then we find these discoveries and then we realize that things go even farther back than we once thought, which is very cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. Okay, weirdest game. So I'm gonna just say it's not weird to everybody, but gambling, because I wanted to say, to get in the part that I wanted to talk about. So to some people, they say, why would you gamble? You know the house always wins. It's not, when you look at it statistically, it's not a good idea. And if you play long enough, you're going to lose your money. So why do people want to do it? And it is that the reinforcement. So you are paid out for something and you want to win, and like you were talking about that dopamine release, so you want that dopamine release, and that's really what people are looking for. So they get that dopamine release. But even in the games that you play, hopefully you're not gambling yet, but maybe in little ways, if you won every time when you were playing your game, would it be fun? No. So what's fun is that you're gonna win sometimes. Sometimes you're rewarded for it and sometimes you are, and you're not sure when that's gonna be. So if you think of a slot machine, that's why it's the most addictive type of reinforcement. If you won every time, it's like, well, this is, why am I gonna sit here? Well, it used to be the handle, now it's you're just gonna press the button over and over again. It's that sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. And that is when we're thinking about learning and reinforcing. We were talking a little bit about punishment, but a reward doesn't always have to be money. It could be just like you hear the ding, you get like something really exciting comes up on the, you remember at the end of Solitaire too, when all the cards would start like flying, and you're like, yeah, I want the cards too. You guys are probably like, we never played that game. But just, have you played? Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't feel, when the cards, thank you. So I don't feel as alone here. When the cards do that at the end, when something exciting happens, you're like.
So you don't feel alone while playing Solitaire?
And it's called.
I want to make sure I heard it right.
I love that.
Yes, and it's called Solitaire. But I want to, you all won't remember this, but there was one point in Arizona. How many of you will go to like an arcade or something like that? And you get the tickets and you get to win the prizes. You spend so much money to win like the crappiest little prize that you could have paid $1 for. But at one point in Arizona, we had a governor that was like, this is gambling. And I remember going to the arcade and you couldn't, like I was playing skee ball and no tickets were coming out. And I was like, well, what's the point of doing it if I'm not gonna get the tickets? So it was, luckily they changed that. But this governor thought we're making a future gambler, so we're not going to do this anymore. But
It's on a card now.
So,
that's true. You don't even get.
When I was a kid, I wear them like a bandolier.
Yeah, the tickets. I
because
know.
It's experiential, right?
Yeah.
You want to, and you can. It's kind of like grading online. It's like you get the points in Canvas, but is it the
That's
same
a good
as-
point. Yeah, the tickets you would wear, and the same thing. The slot machines used to be like the quarters would come out, and it'd be like ching, 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 ching. People would be like, oh, and now it's just it'll kind of make all the bells and whistles, but everything goes on a card or paper.
From an experiential learning standpoint, like anchoring memory to multiple senses like that, like whether it's that even the role play you did in like saying it's this thing, this. What'd you say, bandolier?
Yeah, and people would
like,
see you.
Yeah, it's like there's a lot more that happens now when it's not just hidden, and so that's kind of an interesting part of reality. And as you were saying, it like shifted to the button. I thought about the rat research on cocaine and that sort of thing. And I was like, okay, yeah, because it's the same chemical.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
The strangest game situation that I can think of, when I was about the age of a lot of you, starting college, I went to U of A and I was in a fraternity, and we used to play this game. You guys know what pledges are? They're the new members of the fraternity. And hazing can mean a lot of things. Sometimes it could be mean and terrible, but we made it fun, the fraternity I was in. You guys know Space Invaders? Okay, so the pledges, the new guys, they were told, wear something that you don't mind if it gets destroyed. Why? Because they would have to come back at night and we would go on the back patio and they would line up in 3 rows and they had to make that Space Invaders noise and move back and forth very slowly. And 2 of the older brothers would take 1 ketchup, 1 mustard with a hot dog stand like sprayer thing. And if you hit the person, they have to fall down and then you try to hit the others. So we played a video game with real live humans.
And then you had.
Just don't get mustard in your eye.
Yeah, you don't want to get it in your eyeball.
So everyone had ketchup and mustard all over them.
That I would play that game.
That's
I would do that. That sounds like fun. It's like
So, weirdest game I know of, but can't remember the details on, but hopefully you guys might know it better. But I want to say it's a Central or South American game where they basically played the equivalent of vertical basketball hoop to decide who got to be sacrificed to the gods.
Oh my goodness.
Aztec or Inca.
Are we talking about the Mesoamerican ball game?
Yes.
Where they hit it with their hip?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's been a while, so I'm like,
It's-
I should have
and there's the
refreshed
hoop?
on this.
Yes, in later editions. So it's the Mesoamerican ball court is like a long alley sort of depression thing that has sides that are either slanted or vertical. And on later editions, there's hoops on both sides in the middle and at the end.
And they're positioned like,
Yeah.
looks like this, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not like this. It's like this. And
Wow.
so there are lots of indigenous groups in Mesoamerica, which is our way of saying like Central America, that still play this game, and they play it with a rubber ball, and you have to hit it with your hip and bounce it through these. The human sacrifice is not, as far as I'm aware, still part of this game. It is called something like that. It starts with a UL and has an AMA in there somewhere. But yeah, and some groups did practice human sacrifice as part of it. It was very ritualized. Like anthropologically, there is a lot of ritual in game, especially if we're going to talk about like a sports game, right? There's so much, like there is a series of events. There is this group think that comes together. And I think you actually have a question about this, about how games can bind people together, and so it could be highly ritualized. I mean, if you've ever been to a sporting event or a concert or something, and you just find yourself like have you ever walked out of a big event and you're like, I just feel like I am one with everybody around me. This is a game or a version of play that's breaking down your reality. And anthropologically, it's triggering what we would call an altered state of consciousness, something that is not your normal state. And then, so anthropologically, lots of games are also part of ritual, some sort of religious action that is meant to accomplish something else, and a game is part of it. Or things like joking or comedy or things like that are also anthropological forms of play that are really interesting. And this ball game was played all throughout Central America and into the Southwest. If you go to indigenous CoyoteCon sites in Phoenix and Tucson, many of them have ball courts. And they were also then just also big public spaces. Like you could go to the baseball field and go to an art festival, or you could go to a baseball game. These big public spaces functioned very similarly. So broad cultural practice. Yeah.
I think that is the next question.
Excellent.
So let's see. Did you have more?
No, I'm done.
4 minutes. Okay. So let's do the fast version because we're not going to get to all the questions. But actually, let's see, which ones do I have for it? So I think this is, we'll do this one as the last one instead of the big complex one, or whichever one you guys want to answer that you remember. But this is the...
I don't
remember the other
We'll say you led into this question, so we'll let...
Yes. So I'm also going to plug that because Brooke brought up the ball court. So just so you all know, like in the anthropology department, we have an archaeological collection that was donated to us that came out of the area of Marana. It's from an ancient Hohokam village, and this village site actually had a ball court. And so when we work with our students here, we talk a lot about how like the importance of this site in, right outside of Tucson, right, to have a ball court was a big deal, right? Because not every group would have like the space or anything to dedicate to a ball court. So the fact that certain cultures like make room to create like those structures on that scale is like a really big deal. And that's something that like archaeologists are really interested in trying to understand, like the behaviors and all of those things that go along with that. So that's a great example of like those shared spaces, right? And we do that here, like here on our college campus, like we have spaces dedicated for like baseball. We have a gym that's for like volleyball or basketball. If you're on the golf team, like you might have to go a little farther away to the golf course, right? But this is esports, exactly. So you see that a lot of our spaces here, even in education, right, we have designated areas for game and for play because it's a really important part of what we do, and it's an important part of education too. So.
Okay, I'm going to throw in a psychological theory that I wanted to mention, self-determination theory. The 3 parts are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. We talked about relatedness a bit, but I want to talk about competence. That part of playing a game, a lot of times you want to get good at a game. And if you play a game with someone, like I don't play a lot of video games, but I'll play Mario Kart with my daughter and husband, and like they smoke me. I'm like, what? Why am I not pressing the right buttons? But the more you practice, the better you get at it. So you will feel that sense of relatedness, but you also feel like some competence that you are getting good at it, you're winning, what's the score that you're getting if you're getting at the top. So that could be a positive experience too.
Last thing, 2 minutes we have. From a sociology standpoint, it's a sense of togetherness. That subcultural theory that we talked about. You're not young, you're not old, you're not black, you're not white, you're not gay, you're not straight. You are part of a bigger group. Your personal identity doesn't matter. It's the togetherness. It's the group experience.
Yeah. In the gamification model, when you're part of something bigger than yourself, who can tell me what core drive that is?
Epic calling.
Epic meaning calm. Yeah. So sometimes, and we also have the other one, social relatedness, but those sorts of things are core. And I think for me, the sense of play as part of a positive shared experience is one of the reasons we communicate one of the reasons we try and, the purpose for communication as a primary thing is almost always to connect with other humans. And sometimes there are games we come up with culturally to do this more. Actually, there's a fun one that I'm not as much a fan of, but it used to be called Playing the Dozens, which was almost like a street name for making fun of each other as young men, like junior high and high school guys. Whoever could handle the most insults, it was like a modern version of going out and coming home with the best lion or best kill hunt-wise. It's like, if I can make fun of your mom better and you can handle it, it's proof that we both belong. And so, as far as shared experiences go. But with that, we're all out of time, unfortunately, and I would love to do hours of this, but I'm a nerd. If you all would thank our panelists.
Thank you for your
Thank
participation.
you all.
Thank you guys
good
for
group.
being here.
Yeah, really good class you have here.
Yeah.
And if you have follow-up questions, you can text me, and I can forward it to them, or you can find their email in your Gmail for your students. In your student Gmail. But have a good one. I'll see you guys next week. I can't remember what your homework is, so look at Canvas, and if you don't see it, message me. Tomorrow I am doing one with my mythology class in the evening, and we're going to be talking about geology and mythology. We are going to be talking about ethnogeology and looking into Lord of the Rings and other fantasy realms, as well as some potential socio-political implications of maps and that sort of thing. But it will be both a geology and creative writing and mythology kind of mashup that I and Thomas Roberto for what it's worth. Thank you.
That was really fun, and you have such a good one.
Yeah.
I was almost going to steal that.
That's fine. It'll go up. Thank you so much. So much fun. I'm so glad.
The next time, let's schedule this to go like 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to let you know, like. See, and there's just.
I love playing games.
I would spend. Yeah, I mean, it's dangerous to like. I would do an 8-hour thing, but
This was really, really fun. I loved having a chance to learn about play because I hadn't really thought about it before. And then I just, every time I was like, oh, this is also related.
You can keep those for you.
Recycle responsibly.
I believe in you. Take it. You can use it to write or develop your own game stuff, right? But yeah, well then we should definitely do more, and we should get you playing role play in ways that you'll enjoy.
Oh my goodness. We talked about my anxiety about that.
You did, yeah. So I'm a big fan of like.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Karen. Have a good one. So I'm a big fan of like, what would it take to make it not stressful for you? And but that's also a play exercise in and of itself.
Yeah, I see you're like lighting up. It's like, what's the challenge here? It's like,
I know I'm terrible, but
drag you into the D&D.
or
I participated in a what did we do?
it's the cannibalism one we
Yeah,
did
we're
with
the
Noella.
cannibalism.
Cannibalism. But yeah, we can do more.
Cannibalism comes up with you a lot. I didn't even bring it up.
It was Noella. It's the reference point. It was a significant anchor point to the experience. But also, like you talking like when you talked about doing autopsies and waiting on the face to last.
I'm not really like an entry level.
Actually, that would be interesting. Like that's a crossover with psychology, right? Because like tell me the thing. Say it again for my year ago.
We were talking about like you do like human connections and things like that. It's generally because for most of us, like you have to go in and start to like have that sort of thing. It's that's the most personal. And the second one is when you have to do the upper extremity. You have to have a whole person's hands in order to do it. And so we were talking about how like the sort of like tension point of like having to feel like dehumanize the human, but you're still trying to learn about the